ReelSplint, a splint for the modern-day medic. Located at the center of the ReelSplint is a fully articulated hinge. The hinge allows the proximal end to be adjusted in a medial to lateral direction, while providing simultaneous flexion and extension at the distal end. The knee is the focal point of lower extremity splinting. Reel's hinge is adjusted rapidly at the knee's presenting position angle. Below joint stabilization is accomplished using Reel's ankle hitch or Harding strap method. Extremity support straps can be positioned so severe injury sites can be accessed, monitored, and treated during patient transport. Once the hinge is tightened and support straps connected, Reel's crossmember handles serve as extremity management hand grips. Articulated injuries can often be splinted in the presenting position prior to extrication. Crossmember handles again provide management hand grips for patient movement to a backboard. When the reel is returned to a straight and locked position, the traction ratchet can be inserted into the distal end of the splint. The Sureform ischial pad is highly contoured and pivots for left or right leg traction emulating the ischial pathway angle. Ischial pivoting uniquely captures the natural ascending angle of the ischial bone. The result? A traction fulcrum positioned away from sensitive proximal fracture areas. The natural position of the lower extremity is slightly flexed. Midline flexion control allows the anatomical position of function to be applied and maintained. Reel's traction lock provides an additional safety feature. The sliding lock disengages the traction spool, a benefit during patient movement and splint handling. Logistically, Reel's fold-down design offers more deployment and storage options. The ReelSplint and the ReelSplinting system, a multi-dimensional splint design for the modern-day medic. A variety of lower extremity injuries should and can be immobilized in the presenting position. The knee is the focal point, being either the point of injury or playing a critical supporting role as the joint above or below the injury site. The hinge is the key to splinting moderate to severe extremity angulations. Being comfortable with the splint starts with basic hinge operation. Start by slightly backing off the proximal red hinge knobs, enabling the proximal end of the splint to be articulated in a controlled fashion. Back off the blue distal hinge knobs, allowing adjustment at the distal end. The splint is now ready for placement on the injured extremity. Choose the accessible presenting position. Place one hand at the hinge area, using it to control the distal flexion angle. Your free hand can then control splint articulation movements on the opposite proximal side. Carefully manipulate the proximal and distal sides of the splint until you have matched the presenting injury position. Tighten all four hinge knobs to secure the proper angle for immobilization. Disconnect the lower proximal support buckle and bring it under the extremity and connect. Pull the strap tab to tighten. When pulling the tab, use your free hand to stabilize the opposite side of the splint. Loosen each proximal length adjuster one side at a time. Then slide the ischial pad forward toward the patient's inguinal crease area. Continue to slide the pad until the proper length is achieved. Adjust the remaining proximal length adjuster. Locate the distal blue length adjusters. Loosen both adjusters while holding the distal end in place. Stabilizing with your free hand and gently slide the distal end to the ankle area. Tighten both distal blue length adjusters. Unbuckle and fasten the remaining proximal support strap and ischial strap. Stabilize the splint while tightening. Apply the three remaining distal support straps. Consider injury location when positioning support straps both on the proximal and distal ends of the splint. The access provided readily accommodates the ongoing treatment of severe soft tissue injury sites. Securing the ankle to the distal end of the reel is important for below-injury stabilization. Slide the ankle hitch or supplemental Harding strap very gently under the foot. Wrap the pile side behind the Achilles tendon area Fasten the hook side of the Velcro end over the foot and distal crossmember to secure. An ankle injury, or the ankle distal to any other extremity injury, should be routinely immobilized using the Harding method prior to patient movement. Securing the foot or ankle serves to address foot drop syndrome. Addressing foot drop can be a key morbidity factor. By mitigating or eliminating the damaging forces inflicted at key neurovascular areas of the knee during patient movement. The much longer Harding strap is specialized for foot drop syndrome, providing certain immobilization under the foot when large extremities and footwear are involved. Multiple injury sites can be secured, allowing the medic to take into account the presenting injury aspect. Use the splint crossmembers as handles, easing patient movement to a backboard, gurney, or other patient transport device. Specific injuries can be easily and readily observed for access and treatment. If neurologic or vascular compromise is an issue, partial to full restoration of anatomy can be renewed with the splint in place. Loosen the set of knobs appropriate for the restorative positioning desired. Grasp the splint and stabilize. Use your free hand to gently move the extremity to the desired restorative position of function. Then tighten the respective hinge knobs to secure the restored function angle. Continue monitoring pulses and neurologic status through patient delivery. Consider these other placement options: a medial placement, a lateral placement, a posterior placement. Seek the most straightforward and accessible placement possible. When splinting any limb aspect, remember to immobilize the joint below the injury site. Stabilization of the injured lower extremity should always be considered if and when possible. Patients are routinely immobilized for suspected or actual cervical and long spine complications in the extrication scene. The lower extremity is often accessible or can be made so with the use of a variety of hydraulic tools and other techniques. For the sitting patient, the reel is designed to be applied to the presenting anterior or volar aspect. For splint application prior to extrication, articulate the hinge and splint to match the extremity angle. Place the splint on the presenting position of the extremity. Disconnect and apply a centrally located support strap to hold the splint in place. Pull the proximal strap until snug. Each proximal strap has 2 securing tabs and may be tightened from either side of the patient. Use each proximal length adjuster to achieve the proper proximal limb length on both the medial aspect and the lateral aspect of the extremity. Apply the ischial strap and remaining proximal support strap. The strap can be pulled forward toward the knee to enable easier buckling. Slide the connected strap back into position and tighten. Stabilize the splint. Loosen the distal blue length adjusters, stabilize the splint, and extend the distal end to the ankle area. Connect the remaining distal support straps. Stabilize while tightening. Routinely use the ankle hitch or Harding strap to secure the foot and ankle to prevent potentially damaging foot drop syndrome during extrication. Use the center crossmember as a hand grip. Easing extrication. The extremity can be passed to another rescuer, with continual management control throughout the entire extrication process. As always, continue monitoring neurovascular status. When necessary, cravats or cling can be used as additional or supplemental straps. Loosen the blue hinge knobs and return the ReelSplint to its straight or traction position. Tighten the blue knobs. Disconnect the ischial strap, the proximal, and the distal support straps. To prepare the traction ratchet for connection to the splint distal end, drop the stand down until it falls into the stand retention slots. Slide the traction lock forward. Engage the traction knob. Extend the traction strap to its full length while keeping the ratchet knob engaged. With the stand engaged, slide the traction ratchet toward the distal sleeves. Insert the ratchet into the distal sleeves until a clicking sound is heard. Make sure that both sides of sleeves are connected. Manual traction is being maintained by a second medic using the healthy extremity as an anchor point for manual traction. If immediate field application is not a factor, remove the patient's footwear for more complete access to distal pulse sites and further neurologic exam. Determine splint lengths using the uninjured extremity as a reference. Determine the angle of the ischial pad next to the injured extremity. Use the inguinal crease as a guide. Slide the ankle hitch gently under the injured extremity's ankle. Make sure the D-ring straps are positioned so they are bilaterally placed on either side of the ankle. Wrap the harness around the ankle, securing the Velcro fastening ends. Gently slide the splint under the slightly elevated and supported extremity. Push the splint forward toward the ischium while positioning the splint at the extremity's center line. The pivoted angle will provide a fulcrum at the anatomical ascending angle of the ischial bone. Pad the ischial strap contact area. Connect the ischial strap buckle. Secure the ischial strap, gently pulling the tab end. Grasp the D-rings, pull and position on both sides of the patient's heel. Connect the D-rings to the traction safety clip. With the traction lock disengaged in the forward position, turn the ratchet knob in a clockwise direction, beginning the mechanical ratcheting process. Continue to maintain manual traction until you clearly feel mechanical force overcome manual traction force. Slide the lock back towards the traction spool after the proper amount of traction has been achieved. Apply the top proximal support strap. Fasten the remaining lower proximal support strap. Apply the remaining distal support straps. The distal blue knobs are used to restore the extremity's natural position of function during traction, approximately 5 degrees of flexion. Loosen the distal blue knobs slightly. Gently lift and slightly flex the knee area to restore position of function. After the knee's position of function has been determined and neurologic status confirmed, tighten the blue distal hinge knobs and continue monitoring patient status during transport. Movement to a backboard should be done carefully, taking into account all injuries. Make sure all splint length adjusters and hinge components are properly secured prior to patient movement. Loading may be accomplished by sliding the backboard underneath a slightly log-rolled patient. Continue to maintain support of the injured extremity by using the splint frame to help guide and manage the limb during the patient loading phase. During transport, continue the ongoing monitoring of the patient's distal neurovascular status. As with most gear, it is important to store the splint properly. First, return the splint to the neutral position. Remove the traction ratchet by twisting the connecting sleeves clockwise while pulling the ratchet outward from the distal end. Return the bipod stand to the flat storage position. Place your thumbs on the red stand blocks and push inward while pulling outward with your forefingers on the stand support arms. Once out of the supports, fold the stand flat against the ratchet body. Store the support straps over the top side of the splint, allowing prompt buckle access for the patient application. Pull each tab so the buckle and strap can be folded compactly. Store the tab ends underneath the buckle. The main splint component is ready to be folded for loading into the carry bag. Turn the splint over. With the cross members underneath, fold the distal side of the splint on top of the proximal side. Tighten the blue hinge knobs. Loosen the distal length adjusters and extend the distal end about 3 inches. Tighten the length adjusters. Lay the traction ratchet on the distal side of the splint. Slide the ankle harness under the traction ratchet. Fold it over the central cross member and connect the Velcro closure. Connect the ischial strap around the distal end of the splint and tighten. Load the taller side of the splint into the storage bag. Close the drawstring at the bag opening near the carrying handles. The ReelSplint and the ReelSplinting system, a multi-dimensional splint design for the modern-day medic.